In the gilded halls of Riyadh's royal palace, Ibrahim Traoré walked with the stride of a man carrying centuries of resistance in his shadow. He wasn't here to beg. He wasn't here to bow. His steps echoed on the marble floor like war drums. Across the grand chamber, Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman sat atop a gold-inlaid throne, cloaked in white and framed by flags that whispered of oil and empire. MBS extended a smile, calculated, rehearsed. "You've come far," he said. "Africa is awakening, but be wise. Every lion must know when to kneel." He gestured subtly, as if inviting submission masked in diplomacy. There is power in aligning with the throne. Traoré didn't sit. He didn't smile. His eyes held the storm of 1,000 exploited ancestors. "I've seen men in suits say the same words to my people. Kneel and you'll survive. But what's survival without freedom?" MBS tilted his head, mildly amused. "You speak of freedom, yet your nations still struggle for stability. Your soil is rich, but your hands are empty." "Empty?" Traoré replied, his voice low but sharp. "Our hands are bloodied by the thieves you dine with. You call us poor, yet your wealth drips from our stolen gold." The silence between them grew cold. "You misunderstand me," MBS said, now less amused. "We offer partnership. But in every alliance, someone must lead. Someone must follow." Traoré's stare hardened. "Then let this be clear," he said, stepping forward. "Africa kneels to no throne, and if you try to push us down—" He paused, voice ablade. "We won't kneel. We'll make you fall." The guards tensed. The air shifted. Somewhere between the chandeliers and centuries of unspoken power, something cracked, a fracture not in the marble, but in the illusion of obedience. That evening, beneath the golden chandeliers of the royal banquet hall, the palace was drenched in opulence. Saudi royals, diplomats, and elites raised their crystal goblets in celebration of a new partnership. MBS stood confidently, giving a toast, "May our friendship with Africa grow, under wisdom and guidance." Cameras flashed, applause erupted, but Ibrahim Traoré didn't clap. He looked across the room like a general surveying enemy lines. Later, during a private dinner reserved for just the two leaders, MBS leaned in over a plate of saffron lamb. "You should understand," he said, "sometimes strength is knowing when to bow." Traoré dropped his utensils slowly. "You confuse submission with diplomacy. Africa has bowed for centuries, to Europe, to America, to you. That time is over." MBS smiled faintly. "And you think you'll stand alone? We buy loyalty with billions. Nations come crawling for oil. What makes you different?" Traoré leaned forward. "Because Africa's wealth lies in more than minerals. It lies in the will of people who've had enough. Our silence was mistaken for weakness. But we were only sharpening our knives." MBS narrowed his eyes. "That sounds like a threat." "It's a prophecy," Traoré shot back. The room fell still again. Even the silent servants slowed their steps. Two visions of power, one built on fear, the other on fury, now stared across a table that could no longer contain them. Traoré stood up, pushing his chair back with calm defiance. "You can keep your gold," he said. "I bring fire." And with that, he walked out of the palace, leaving the prince with a glass half full and a world that, for the first time, didn't seem so easily controlled. The following day, news headlines across the Arab world screamed, "Traoré insults the crown." MBS's media machine moved fast, painting the African leader as a radical, ungrateful guest who disrespected a sovereign ally. In response, the Burkina Faso government released footage. No edits, just raw truth. The video showed MBS saying, "Kneel," and Traoré's chilling reply, "I'll make you fall." It spread like wildfire. TikTok, YouTube, Telegram, everywhere. Young Africans shared it with captions like, "This is our voice." Even in some Middle Eastern nations, reform-minded citizens whispered admiration. Inside Riyadh, however, the mood turned cold. In a closed-door meeting, MBS pounded the table. "He dares to mock us in our own palace," his voice thundered. One advisor muttered, "He turned your command into a challenge." The prince's knuckles whitened. "Then we respond with power. Cut every deal, every aid package. Sanction anything African that touches our borders." But in Ouagadougou, Traoré's circle was calm. One general said, "Let them ban our goods. We'll grow our own." Another added, "The real war isn't economic, it's ideological." Traoré nodded. "They think kneeling is survival, but we survived by refusing to kneel." And so, battle lines were drawn, not with tanks or drones, but with ideas. On one side, an empire built on obedience and oil. On the other, a continent rediscovering its spine. As night fell across two continents, one truth became clear: the next conflict wouldn't be fought in deserts, but in the hearts of the people. 3 days after the encounter, Ibrahim Traoré took the stage at the Pan-African Unity Forum in Addis Ababa. The world watched. Every camera lens focused, every microphone live. He didn't hold back. "In Riyadh, I was told to kneel," he began. The room went silent. "I was told that respect comes from submission, that power belongs to those who inherited it, that Africa should be grateful for scraps." He paused, letting the words hit. "I did not kneel. I will never kneel." Thunderous applause erupted. Even delegates who usually stayed neutral, from Senegal, from Ghana, from Ethiopia, stood up. What was supposed to be a diplomatic moment had become a war cry. In a sharp tone, Traoré continued, "We are not ornaments in your palace. We are not puppets you crown with contracts. And we are not afraid." A Saudi delegation member stormed out. Another whispered into a phone, likely sending damage reports back to Riyadh. But Traoré didn't blink. "We've tasted their promises. We've swallowed their threats. Now it's time they taste our defiance." A roar of approval swept the hall. The speech hit news cycles within minutes. Back in Saudi Arabia, MBS watched from his private chamber, glass in hand. His smile faded. "He's making heroes out of rebels," he muttered. Yes, he was. And the world was starting to notice. While the world replayed Traoré's speech, something unexpected began to stir, not in politics, but in economics. Within 48 hours, several African nations publicly announced a review of their oil and mineral contracts with foreign powers, particularly with Gulf states. Nigeria, Chad, even Algeria. The message was subtle but unmistakable: the game was changing. At the heart of this shift was Traoré's Burkina Faso. It had just signed a trilateral resource deal with Mali and Guinea, no Western intermediaries, no Saudi investors. For the first time, Africa was writing the terms. Riyadh's energy sector, watching with unease, began making calls. A Saudi prince close to MBS told the press, "This isn't just about one man. It's about a continent waking up." In a private meeting, MBS fumed. "He's poisoning the well," he said, pacing furiously. "He wants to tear down everything we built in Africa." An aide nervously replied, "Sir, it's working." Meanwhile, Traoré, calm, precise, met with Pan-African economists. "If we control the source," he said, pointing to a map of gold, lithium, and oil fields, "we control our fate." That single line hit harder than any bullet. The ripple had begun. And the storm was on its way. In a dramatic escalation, the Saudi crown prince invited a summit of Gulf and select African leaders to Riyadh. He called it a dialogue for unity, but everyone knew it was a calculated move, a show of force. The message was clear: Riyadh still ruled the chessboard. But Traoré? He refused the invitation, not with silence, but with thunder. Standing before a roaring crowd in Ouagadougou, flanked by students and elders, Traoré addressed the world. "I don't attend the masquerade of monarchs," he said. "I speak only where truth is welcome." Within hours, his refusal went viral. Millions reposted his speech, with hashtags like #NotYourPuppet and #AfricaRises trending across platforms. Even Western analysts, usually cautious, began to speculate: was Traoré building not just resistance, but a rival bloc? In response, MBS's media arm launched a campaign labeling Traoré a radical and dangerous demagogue. Lavish editorials called for reform in Burkina Faso, the same word once used before military interventions. Traoré answered in kind, not with insults, but with history. He posted a single image on state television. A colonial officer bowing before a defiant African leader in the 1960s. The caption? They said we'd kneel. We taught them to fall. The thrones were shaking, not just in Riyadh, but across every capital still clinging to the illusion of control. And Traoré had just declared, this was no longer a debate. It was a reckoning. Saudi Arabia offered a bold new deal, oil partnerships, defense support, and infrastructure investment across the Sahel, but with strings attached. Hidden clauses. Implied obedience. MBS called it the future of cooperation. But Traoré saw it differently. Call it what it is, he told his cabinet. Leverage disguised as friendship. In a surprise move, he made the entire draft public, leaked line by line on Burkina Faso's state website. The world gasped. Western leaders blinked. No African leader had ever exposed a deal like this in real time. The media exploded. Headlines screamed. Traoré breaks the silence. Saudi diplomacy exposed. Africa is not for sale. Traoré then gave a televised address, standing not at a podium, but at a farmers' co-op in rural Burkina Faso. He pointed to the soil. This, he said, feeds our people. Their oil feeds only the greedy. He didn't just refuse the deal. He redefined the battlefield, land versus oil, self-sufficiency versus dependence. In Riyadh, MBS's inner circle was livid. A second offer came, this time more generous. Traoré's reply? We are not a nation of beggars. We are the children of Sankara, not the servants of sultans. That line echoed far beyond Africa. Even dissenters within Saudi intellectual circles quietly applauded the courage. Because in this war of futures, the oil may burn. But the land always grows back. The next summit was planned in Egypt. A flashy gathering of Gulf and African leaders, cameras rolling, promises soaring. MBS arrived with full regalia, seated on a custom-built golden throne beneath banners proclaiming unity through trade. But when Traoré stepped onto the stage, he didn't take a seat. He didn't even walk to the podium. He just stood there, calm, eyes fixed on the throne. Then he spoke into the silence. You bring thrones to our land. But forget these lands, remember who built them. And who they buried beneath them. The room froze. MBS tried to brush it off with a smile. Symbolism is tradition, he said. Traoré replied without blinking. And submission is not ours. Rather than engage in backroom deals, Traoré met with local Egyptian farmers, activists, students. In every interview, he repeated one phrase. Africa doesn't need a seat at their table. We're building our own. By the end of the summit, Saudi advisors were scrambling, their PR strategy imploding. What was meant to be a show of unity had become a stage for resistance. An African youth delegation went viral on social media, chanting, "No more gold for empty thrones." This wasn't just diplomacy anymore. It was theater. It was revolution scripted live. And Traoré had just stolen the scene. When word reached MBS that Traoré had refused his joint security pact, the Saudi crown prince called for an emergency broadcast. With cameras flashing and advisors flanking him, he spoke in front of a massive digital map of Africa. We have offered prosperity, security, and modernity, he said. Those who reject it will be left behind in the desert of irrelevance. That same night, Traoré held a live address of his own, but not from a palace. From a refugee camp on the edge of Ouagadougou. No suits. No pomp. He raised a finger, not in warning, in promise. Prosperity that chains us isn't wealth. Security that silences us isn't peace. Modernity without dignity is slavery in 4K. Then he walked through the sand, drawing a single red line with a stick. This is the line you don't cross. This is Africa's line. You cross it, and you fall. The clip exploded across the internet. Meme pages branded it "Red Line Diplomacy." Youth coalitions across West Africa painted literal red lines outside foreign embassies. Even global news anchors were stunned. No African leader in recent memory had pushed back so directly. No one had ever looked a Gulf titan in the eye and said, "We are not for sale." And just like that, the world learned. Africa isn't begging. It's drawing lines. The G20 summit was in session. Flashbulbs fired. Delegates whispered. As Mohammed bin Salman entered the hall flanked by Gulf allies, he scanned the room. And there he was, Ibrahim Traoré, seated confidently, eyes locked forward. No entourage. No hesitation. MBS made his way to the podium, voice calm but barbed. "Those who defy us should reconsider. The world runs on power, not posturing." Then, to everyone's shock, Traoré stood up uninvited, walked to the center aisle, and, without ever looking at MBS, addressed the room. "Africa is not a shadow of any empire. We kneel for no man. We build with bare hands what your oil never bought. Unity. Resistance. Legacy." The room was frozen. Diplomats glanced nervously. Cameras panned. But MBS said nothing. Not a word. Traoré didn't sit back down. He walked out. The headlines the next day? Newspaper MBS spoke of kneeling, Traoré walked out standing tall. Newspaper, a crown prince left speechless by a soldier president. Newspaper, Africa's line has been drawn, and this time, it's global. The summit had ended. But the echoes of Ibrahim Traoré's words hadn't. Reporters chased silence. Leaders whispered in corners. Cameras replayed the moment across every continent. And at the center of it all, stood a man, not with an army behind him, but with a continent within him. He didn't come to kneel. He came to remind the world that Africa does not bend, not to crowns, not to wealth, not to fear. "Tell your kings," Traoré had said. "We were never your subjects. We are the storm they thought would never come." That moment wasn't a speech. It wasn't a confrontation. It was a shift in history. Because for the first time, the throne trembled.